at number 8, the Panthers should be hoping for what?
They should be hoping for a difference maker, Adam.
And who would that difference maker be, Julian Council?
It could be a whole number of guys potentially sitting there. I've seen a lot of different things over the last couple of days, especially yesterday. Like, I was absolutely stunned when I saw Matt Miller of ESPN mock Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle from Ole Miss via Texas A&M to Carolina at 8. I didn't think he would be the guy, but apparently he's been a riser. Mason Graham, I've seen that happen a couple of times. And I was actually on with 10 to XL down in Jacksonville. They were doing a media mock draft. And when I got up there, I still had Mason Graham and Jalen Walker on the board. And I thought to myself, if this was a scenario that played out for Carolina, would they take Jalen Walker, who's a hybrid, who they say they believe is an outside linebacker, or would they take a defensive tackle, Mason Graham, and add him next to Derrick Brown for the next 4+ years? I would think that they probably would go with Mason Graham in that scenario. So I took Mason Graham, and then I see Daniel Jeremiah mocking Mason Graham once again to Carolina. So it could be Mason Graham, it could be Jalen Walker, it could be Walter Nolan, it might even be Mykel Williams. Like, at this point in time, I really don't know. It just really depends on like what's going to happen at 5 with Jacksonville, and then at 6 with the Raiders, and then 7 with the Jets.
Yeah, like, I don't know if you've played around with the ESPN mock draft simulator. I'm addicted. I feel like I'm addicted to this every year, but I've caught the bug, and I've done I don't know how many different simulations. If I were the Jets, and the Jets pick right before the Panthers, which is why I have done a lot of these as the Jets should take Tyler Warren from Penn State. They should take – I actually saw the other tight end, whichever the second best tight end in the draft is.
Colston Loveland.
Right. I saw a mock draft that had the Jets taking that guy as opposed to Tyler Warren. But I think the Panthers should consider that pick as well, but only if Mason Graham isn't there. To me, if Graham is there, I race to the podium. I think that's more important than an edge rusher. And the edge rusher, I guess they're looking at, isn't necessarily an edge rusher. He's a Swiss Army knife who you can put anywhere.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Jalen Walker. I think it's pretty enticing to have someone who can play both off-ball linebacker and be able to play edge. And if you look at, like, next year when Jadeveon Clowney is likely not on the roster, when Josie Jewell is likely not on the roster, to have someone who can fill both of those needs there, that's awesome. But also think about it, does he fit what the scheme is today and what may be the scheme next year for Jadeveon is no longer the defensive coordinator?
Right.
And does it make sense to get like a hybrid type of player? Because we have seen some of these guys like an Isaiah Simmons from Clemson not pan out. I have a hard time believing that Jalen Walker won't pan out, but I had a hard time believing Isaiah Simmons wouldn't pan out when he was there coming out of Clemson. So I think I blame more of Arizona than the player, but still it has not worked. And Jeremy Chin, hell, he was a hybrid, but now he's kind of bouncing around the league as he didn't really fit what Jadeveon wanted to do. Was there in D.C. last year and played well with the Commanders, and now I think he's out in Las Vegas with the Raiders, still trying to figure out whether he's a true safety or a linebacker or whatever it may be. But, yeah, it's kind of hard to argue against like a defensive tackle, especially when, I mean, the line of scrimmage is important. You saw last year when Derrick Brown went down just how poor Carolina was behind him. And I do think they've gotten better this offseason with the addition of Brown coming back for another year, of course, as he's now going to be back healthy. They bring in Bobby Brown III. I don't really see Turk Wharton as being someone who's going to really help them stop the run, but that's another body in there. Shai Tuttle is in a more reduced role, which is better for what you should be asking of him at this point in time in his career than what they were doing the last 2 seasons. And if you tell me you can add Mason Graham, and you have Derrick Brown, whose contract is like a 4 or 5 year deal that's kicking in starting this year.
Yep.
And you have 4 cheap years Mason Graham plus the 5th year option potentially. You have a top 5 defensive tackle next to another guy who could be a top 10 defensive tackle in the league. And then you have maybe a better situation than you had before when they had KK Short and Star Lotulelei here in Carolina. Like, I don't think you can ever go wrong going with defensive linemen or even hell an offensive lineman when it comes just foundationally building your football team.
All right, so you bring up an offensive lineman, and I mentioned before I was looking at, and I've been mock draft, like my eyes are glazing over from all the mock drafts that I've seen and listened to. When I saw Field Yates mock the guy from Missouri who's as a right tackle, it actually, and I said this a few weeks ago, and I got some feedback on Xer, and they were like, "You're crazy. Why would they take an offensive lineman?" I'm like, because you can never have too many offensive linemen, and I don't believe Moten is going to be around forever. And if this guy is a road grading offensive lineman on the right side, a right tackle, who's also allowed, one sack all last year at Missouri in the SEC? I don't know. I think that's maybe a guy who you can at least have in the wings if something happens. And you can never be caught with too many offensive linemen. They'll all play. So I wouldn't be against that, but it's probably not their priority. Where do you sit with, other than the trenches, what is the most important need? Julian Council, Locked On Panthers podcast.
Well, I mean, I will say that with the offensive tackle situation, like you go back to last year, I don't think anyone expected them to go with the running back in the second round or a linebacker in the third round, knowing that Jonathan Brooks was going to miss however much time in that season, and Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders are coming back. Like, those are going to be the top two backs last year. And then you had Josie Jewell and Shaq Thompson entering into his likely last year, which it turned out to be. Like, you wouldn't think Trevin Wallace is going to play. Now, of course, Wallace had to play because Shaq got injured. But if they take an offensive tackle at 8, that'd be pretty similar to last year. I know the value is a lot more a top 10 pick, but it would be a guy who's coming in with the expectation that he's going to redshirt and then be the starter in 2026. And like, that wouldn't be necessarily crazy. It wouldn't, I don't think, help the team this year. But we'll see. But as far as like what the other need, like, I think safety is obviously a big need. I've heard that Houston, they want to move up potentially to get one of those offensive tackles, as it looks like Will Campbell is going to go to Jackson to Patriots at 4, and then Armand Membu from the Zoo is going to go either to the Raiders or to the Jets potentially, and then Kelvin Banks may go in the top 10. So if Houston wants to be able to get one of those 3 guys and get an instant starter, they're going to have to get up to the top 10. And if Carolina goes back to 25, I'm thinking like Nicky Manwari from South Carolina may be on the board for them. But he can be a day one starter at safety. But if not, then we're probably looking on day 2, whether it be at 57 or 74, and maybe they even wait until early day 4 at 111 or 114. I don't know, but I think safety clearly is looking at the whole. That they have one true set-in-stone starter in Trevon Merrick, and they could play Demani Richardson as well. They do not want to play Nick Scott at safety again this year. They want him to be more of a special teams guy. So they have to add a safety who can start, I would think, in this draft, or at least be a part of the rotation. But I do think it's a position that after the draft, they're likely going to circle back and try to get some more veterans in that room.
They have 3 picks, the Panthers do, in day 1 and day 2. Three in the top 3 rounds. They obviously pick at number 8, and then right now it is 57 and 74. If you trade back in round 1, the priority would be getting at least one more day 2 pick, correct?
Yes. So I would think at the very least you got to find a way to move up earlier in the second round. And then, yes, it would be nice if you're also, like, in addition to that, adding a pick maybe in the third round.
Right. Now it's tough. You have to trade back pretty far if you want to add a second and a third. You would have to be trading back probably into the mid-20s. How far back do you think they can go and still get a player that they have circled in the first round?
That's hard because Dan Morgan was not willing to answer how far he's comfortable going back. And that's been the thing. I remember Scott Bitter would talk about a couple of years ago, whatever draft they were in, where they got like through 16. You felt pretty good about all those guys. And I don't think it's as deep this year. We can talk about the edge rusher class and how deep it is, but you look at the edge rushers, like Jalen Walker, there's questions about him, whether he is truly an edge rusher. Michael Williams, you can talk about the production or lack thereof that he's had. Shamar Stewart as well. Like, there was no production at all during his time at A&M. Mike Green, a ton of off-the-field questions where he might be a guy who's going to fall all night long. So none of the, Donovan Ezra-Rock is the guy I look at, say, okay, you talk about production, you talk about playing in a P4. Okay, this is the guy to take, right? So I can't imagine they're trying to really go past maybe like 12 or 13, where I think Dallas and Miami are sitting right now. I don't think they're really trying to go that much farther down the draft boards, considering that there's not like a ton of high-end talent. Like, the high-end talent's going to be gone in the first 3 picks. Like, that's going to be, well, it's the 2 guys that are the high-end talent are Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter.
Right.
They're going to be gone in the first 3 picks. Cam Ward, and he's not really the number 1 overall pick. It's just a terrible quarterback class, and he decided to stay around for another year, and it's worked out into his favor. But he's not better than any of the guys that got drafted and the first 6 quarterbacks that went last year. But
right.
just situation, what year it is, he's going to be the number 1 pick. And I guess that's great for him financially, horrible for him because of where he's going. But the 2 premium players in this draft class are Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. Then there's like some solid guys you could see as being starters, but I don't know if there's any stars. So I would guess they probably want to go past like 13.
Yeah, and then I mean it's hard to get teams to trade up. I think the player that teams would definitely trade up for is Ashton Genty. Could you see the Cowboys being silly enough to give the Panthers, because that to me that's the target right there, is if Genty falls to the Panthers at 8, which I frankly don't see happening because I get the feeling that the Jaguars are going to draft him. But if Genty if Genty falls to 8, I mean, isn't that the carrot to dangle in front of the Cowboys?
Yeah, that's what I think. I was looking at it because I've been talking about the last couple of weeks. Maybe it's Shedeur Sanders. Is he the key to Carolina being able to trade down? But that doesn't appear to really be the thing, as the media that seems to be more enamored with Shedeur than the actual teams out there. And Pittsburgh may be able to stay at 21 and get him. So it turns out maybe it's Ashton Genty. As Peter Schrager had reported on Tuesday, there were teams that were calling the Browns and calling the Giants, and those 2 teams were receptive to some of the trade offers, and they were trading up to either get Travis Hunter or get Abdul Carter, and then also trying to get Ashton Genty. And it looks like Jacksonville at 5, they're a team that could take him, maybe Tedder McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. Right. That's been another name bandied about and linked to Jacksonville. They could go Mason Graham. So if somehow they don't take Ashton Genty, the Raiders, they probably should go offensive tackle. The Jets don't seem to be interested in Genty like that. It really comes down to if he can get past Jacksonville. Maybe Las Vegas takes him, but it's a far greater chance that Jacksonville is going to take him there at 5. But if he does fall to 8, then there are teams like the Cowboys, you would think, or maybe someone else there that's not too far down that would be interested in him. And like that would be, I think, the ideal scenario for Carolina is if Ashton Genty is able to drop and then they can find a trade partner eager enough to get up there and be able to not move back too far. But if they do have to move back further than they want to, then that's when they got to start squeezing for more picks there on day 2.
Julian Council, Locked On Panthers podcast at Julian Council on Twitter and on Blue Sky. Do you have a mock draft beyond round 1? Do you have a 7-round mock or a 3-round mock?
No, I do not.
I
did do one where I guess I did do a 7-round mock. I fired a simulator and then just did a bunch of picks. I think I traded down the board and I was able to get which you can do because you can always like make sure the trade goes through.
Yeah, it's fun.
I got traded down.
I've wasted so much time the last 3 days messing around with that. I keep taking Tyler Warren with the pick at 8.
No.
Yeah, no. I keep doing that. Why is that a no? He's a difference maker.
I guess. I mean, come on.
You can have 2 great tight ends, by the way.
Well, I don't know if they don't have one great tight end right now.
Well, it's true.
So I don't know.
But for the people who love
didn't even go in the top 10. I just can't even imagine a guy who, I mean, he was awesome last year.
Yeah.
Penn State's receivers are also ass, so that's why he was even as good as he was, because the opportunity. But, like, I mean, come on. Brock Bowers was a dude who was a revelation. Didn't even go top 10. I just can't wrap my mind around Tyler Warren going in the top 10 tonight. So we'll see.
When I made the trade with Dallas, he was there at 12, and I took him at 12. Just saying.
There you go.
Julian Council, Locked On Panthers podcast. You're always awesome, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, appreciate it, Adam. Enjoy tonight.
Oh, by the way, we're crowned on Sunday, no?
Yes, Liverpool will be crowned on Sunday. I don't even think I'll be able to watch the match. I'm going to be up in South Jersey for my buddy's wedding. So I'll be driving back to the airport to get to Philly. So I have to be listening to it on the radio or whatever.
There you go. You can just stream it right through your phone, right through your car.
Yeah, it's very true.
There you go.
But I gotta make sure I got Sirius XM, so I can always tune in there.
There you go. Thanks, man.
All right.
Talk to you later.